Although released not so long ago, Dandy's world has gone through dozens of changes, making it almost unrecognizable from its earlier versions. In this video, we will take a look at the top 10 things that got removed or never made it into Roblox's favorite game. Let's start with some important design changes that transform many toons and twisteds. And who is better to start with than Dandy himself? Coel made the first Dandy's concept design back around the end of 2022. This older design is similar to the final design that is in the game, but you can spot a few differences. One of the differences visible on first glance is on his face. First, his cheeks were tan. The contemporary design also has colored cheeks, but in green. This looks more like a slightly darker color than the rest of his face. From this design, it also looks like he was supposed to have visible pupils, which the current Danny does not have, or rather does have, but only when angry. His petals are also a bit different in this concept art. Although the color palette is the same, his petals were made pointing behind his head, while nowadays they are completely parallel with his head. What is also different is his lower limbs, as he's wearing a pair of mismatched colorful socks, with colored ankles, toes, and heels. Some of these elements were still used when the first Dandy's World teaser came out. In the video, we can see Dandy running down a hallway and waving to the viewers. What's different about him is especially his eyes. This early version had a pair of inset eyes like a doll. I must say that it does look quite creepy. The eyes were also able to emit light, adding to the creepiness. But his normal form isn't the only one that was changed. A complete makeover was done on Twisted Dandy. Actually, the current version of Twisted Dandy is the third design. He was first intended to be very slim and much taller, with completely black eyes that appeared to emit black mist. This design also used to have 4 arms. When you look at this design closely, don't you find it familiar? I thought so. It seems that this design was in the end used in the game. Although not on Dandy, the present Twisted Astro seems to look very closely to this concept. The 4 arms, he's also a lot larger and taller than his toon counterpart, very similarly to the Twisted Dandy design. And from the look of it, it appears that some inspiration was carried from his black eyes too, as Twisted Astro seems to keep his left eye black with a star, although it's now red as opposed to white in normal form, but his right eye is darker and crying ichor. Twisted Dandy's second concept looks a bit closer to his final design, although still very different. One of the main similarities is that his body is composed of ichor. However, not the entire body like in the current design, but only to the ankles. His lower body is his regular toon body, but the colors are different, a lot more pale and desaturated. He appears to have claw-like hands like in the current design, but they look a bit different, at least in the sense that they are not colored as his petals are, but inherit the standard greenish color of his legs. He also looks to have a very similar face to the one that the current Twisted Dandy has. And the last big difference is that there are no VHS tapes tangled around him. Both of these previous designs have one thing in common, and that's the fact that Dandy doesn't run on all 4s like he does now. In the first design, he completely lacks even just hints of him using his arms to help him move around. The second design is closer to that, with him being a lot bent forward, with his arms nearly on the ground. Maybe the intention was for him to be able to run after you for just a few seconds on all 4. What do you think about Dandy's redesign? I probably like the current model the most, actually. Although the first Twisted Dandy design was cool too, and I am happy they used it for Twisted Astro instead. Now, let's run through some other changes in appearance in Twisteds and toons. Twisted Glisten used to show a lot more cracks in her face than he has now. What also appears to be missing in the current design is his big smile covering the whole face. On the other hand, what's new in his current design is the ping bow that he has wrapped around the neck. Twisted Shelly was also planned to be a lot different than the current design. Can you spot all the differences? If you answered that everything is different, you would be mostly right. The design carries more resemblance to her original toon self, so you could probably find more similarities to the uninfected version than to the current Twisted Shelly. Let's start from the top, from the head. One difference prominent at first glance is the eyes. This older design has 2 black branches stretching out of her back, eyes, and heels. This made her look really creepy, and I wish I could see how it would look in-game. What's also interesting about the head is that she possessed no eyes. This design also gave her larger claws and hearts on her palms. Notably, the arms and hands seem to be used after all, as Goob in both forms has the exact same design. Twisted Shelly also had one more design that were not used in the end, but it's a lot more similar to the current one. The most notable change is that her body was broken into 3 parts, which were connected via a few strings of ichor. Her eyes would have also been mismatched, her left eye having a large black pupil with a red dot in the center, while the right eye resembled the current design, having a red slit instead. In a Q&A, QL stated that he scraped this design because he wanted Twisted Shelly to have some ties to a dinosaur, as she was passionate about paleontology. One more character that changed so much that you would have trouble recognizing it is Twisted V. The earliest design featured V without waist down. Instead of legs, she was depicted coming from a ventilation shaft with her torso and head connected through a bundle of wires. I doubt that she was meant to be floating around the map chasing you. I would rather assume that she should have been a supplementary bot attacking you only around vents. What's also different in this design is the projected face. Instead of a sad face, it showed a wide grin with sharp teeth. Her hands were also fitted with thicker palms and sharper claws, similar to what we saw in the earlier design of Twisted Shelly, or what we can see in the current Goob design. Then there are loads of other early designs that didn't make it into the game or minor redesigns, where you, on the other hand, would have trouble spotting the differences. For instance, Scraps, whose only difference is missing eyelashes, or Twisted Gigi, who had 2 arms coming from the head instead of 1. Now let's talk about in-game changes. For a game of this size, I would expect more balance changes in perks or abilities, but there aren't many of them really, so let's run through them quickly. Pebble's both active and passive abilities used to be different. His old passive was called Survival Instincts and would give the player a 25% boost in stamina and stealth when they dropped to 1 heart. Both effects were active for as long as you had only 1 life left. Instead, he now has an ability called Fetch. This used to be his active, but now it is a passive ability instead, and does essentially the same as before, highlights items when you are near them. Pebble's active is now Speak. With that, you can alert any Twisteds nearby to go after you. The only other abilities that were changed are those of a Razzle and Dazzle, or rather, they were not changed, but made from toggle to passive. Razzle and Dazzle has an ability that, on odd floors, increases movement speed, and on even floors, increases extraction speed. Quell wanted to give the player the ability to toggle between the two as they please, but later scrapped the idea since it would be too overpowered. Talking of abilities, one more thing is worth covering. Twisted Connie should have had a bit different mechanic. On a livestream before Connie was added to the game, Quell mentioned that her Twisted counterpart would possess a machine and would attack you on a failed skill check. However, her mechanic is rather attacking players when they start an extraction on a possessed machine. For the last section, let's take a look at some map changes that were made over time. And what place is better to start with than the place you see as soon as you launch the game? Upon the release of Alpha, there was an area completely dedicated to UGC items in the lobby. Soon, however, this was completely remodeled to create an area for Dial Store, which sells more than just UGC items. But the roleplay mode still features the old layout. What also got a little bit of touch is the train station just outside the lobby. When the game was first released, the train station had the simplest design you could imagine, just featuring a train and tracks. But not so long after, it was completely remodeled, featuring a more detailed train and some decorations on the platforms. There weren't many map changes, the only 2 notable ones are more of an Easter egg than real changes. In the warehouse, there was an Easter egg from a horror game called Kinito Pet. On one of the computer screens, you could find Kinito seemingly trying to crawl out of the computer screen. This was later removed as it was added by a fired developer, and the newly appointed team didn't feel like leaving it there. What could also be found in the warehouse map are license plates referencing Quell and one of the fired developers. After the developer left the game, his name was deleted from these mentions.